Roundtable Podcast. I'm your boy Corey G, Small Arms Danny, at Trey Speed, and the graphic gangster himself, Cole Susak. Today we got Matt Wenning from Wenning Straight. Here's the deal. Matt's backed it up on the platform for like 20 plus years. He got all the letters beside his name. He's killing it on content. He's in the outlaw community of Conjugate, as we all are on this podcast. And so what I'm hoping by today is, one, you're going to get a lot smarter by listening to Matt, and we are too. Two, he's going to explain, hopefully, when I ask him certain questions, why some of the shit we do works that I can't explain. And also hear some great stories, but I think we might have to start with the one we just heard that was not being recorded.
First four-figure
squat. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, and then we'll talk about some background. Matt, you said the first time you were getting ready to squat 1,003, you had been around Westside for about a year. Tell everybody what happened, the person before you.
So I had just moved. I just graduated with my master's degree in 2005.
Yeah.
So I had been traveling back and forth to Westside 3 hours away when I could, which was about twice a month.
Yeah.
So I would squat with the PM crew with Chuck and them on Friday night, go stay at Louie's house, which was always a fucking treat.
I'm sure.
And then get up in the morning and bench with George and drive home.
Okay.
I did that for 4 or 5 years while I was going to college. So the first real meet that I do under the Westside Barbell full-time lifter type deal, APF Senior Nationals in Vegas, like 06. And I go there and it's my first time I'm going to squat 1,003. And not only do they do things in classes of weight, but they also do them in alphabet.
Okay.
So me and this other guy were both going to do 1,003, but his name was alphabetically before mine. So he goes under the bar, freaks out about 4 to 6 inches down. So he's still super high, dumps it over the top of his head. And it's a brand new squat bar that's razor sharp. And I just see this, like the blood just rip off of his scalp. The spotters just drop so fast that they can't get their hands from underneath the bar. One guy rides it to the ground and snips his fucking fingers off with 1,003. So he's standing like raw, like it's a fucking Freddy Krueger.
Hey, we're worried about when guys are taking too long getting their knee wraps on.
Yeah, no
this
shit.
motherfucker's let his fingers laying on the floor.
So the dude's fucking like, oh, you know, screaming. And so they're trying to get the weight off and get the fingers. And then the medics come and take this guy away. And they're stripping it down to a feasible load to put back up on the rack. And Louie the whole time's blocking me. Don't watch this fucking shit. You know, while they're taking off my wraps, you know, to reset because they're going to give me however much time I want.
Sure.
Instead of going, you got 1 minute, because I just watched a guy about fucking die. And so I remember him and Hussey come up to me. Hussey was, as far as at that time, Hussey and Louie were the two top powerlifting coaches.
Yeah.
No question asked. And Hussey comes up to me and goes, you get this fucking shit. This is the baddest squat I've ever seen.
They come from Rick Hussey.
Goes,
That's pretty amazing.
You just watch somebody about fucking die and you're going to take the same weight. So I get under there and I remember just being so fucking like nervous.
Yeah.
So I just make sure I just slow everything down so that weight's stable. Because it felt like wherever we were at that time, I don't know if it was the ceiling height. We were in this massive ballroom that had like 30-foot ceilings. I think that was throwing guys off.
Spatial awareness.
The spatial awareness where the balance was getting fucked up. So I pick it up and just control it and just dunk it and hit it and stand up, and the crowd goes fucking crazy because they're thinking this is a shit show. And I get it, and I'm like, that was kind of solidified me as one of the badasses of that time.
Hell yeah.
At Westside Barbell, you know. So that was an interesting situation, but that was my first taste of a multi-ply meet under the Westside Barbell banner, was watching somebody fucking die with the same weight I was getting ready to do.
So what a lot of people, obviously the mystique of Westside and just the craziness of guys like Chuck and yourself, and it's like people don't really understand an environment like that because it doesn't exist, right? Which is what we're trying to create in our morning crew. And it's like that competition, not that really everybody even likes each other. Everyone wants to be on that fucking board, take these world records. Like, it's so lost in today's gym, like, but it pushes you. And you did obviously extremely well on your own when you left Westside too, because that's when you hit a bunch of your numbers, Matt.
Yeah.
But it's like, talk about how important training partners, environment, competition, and that real, like, they call, I'm a dog, but that's like a fucking, like, for real, like, killer mentality that you are walking into every day.
Sure. I mean, and to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of the reasons that I did so well when I left was because I took what I needed to take from there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
As far as what you're asking, which is that intensity level, we all trained together so hard that going to meets was a fucking vacation.
That's how we feel.
You know?
It feels fucking easy compared to what we do in the gym.
And I think especially training with guys like Chuck and those dudes at the time, because when I was with Chuck at Westside, Chuck would already have broken 8 or 10 all-time squat world records in 3 different weight classes. So you bring your fucking Wheaties
every time.
Like there was no showing up. It's going to be a, and in some ways this was very wrong. It was you go in there. There's no fucking deload days. Every day is fucking grind city, and you couldn't have a real job. Yeah. You couldn't work like a real person because you're at home basically wondering if you should go to the hospital every Friday. This isn't like, and looking back now, what I learned from was what intensity it was going to need to be the world record holder. Yeah. But I also learned what not to do, which was build in the recuperation time. And that's something that Louie and Chuck never learned. And I think that's a lot of reasons why Louie was always hampered with injuries. And Chuck was just so intensive that he could just work through injuries. Yeah. In some ways, not good.
Yeah. So, and you've been able to stay injury-free pretty much your entire career.
I've tore a groin, and it was because I was dehydrated in Florida.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've never really been hurt with the shit I've done, and which is amazing. Also why it makes me hard to still want to compete, because I'm like,
I wondered about that, Matt.
Well, I felt like, how many times can you go to Vegas and be on the blackjack table and win until you massively lose? Yeah. And for me now, I'm glad my knees and my back and my shoulders are still healthy enough I can still train hard.
Yeah.
And that's what's important to me.
I fucking love it.
If I compete, I become so, and the old Westside days, I don't mean to, but I become so fucking focused that nothing matters. Yeah. And when you start running a business, that's horrible.
That balance is tricky.
It's not easy. It's impossible for me to do. So until I can get to the point where everything's more replicable, where I don't have to be on my toes, mentally and physically all the time with the business, then maybe it's time to sit down and consider doing some of that. But as of right now, I get so fucking drawn in from my experiences from Louie and Westside of that focus. But what I try to tell people all the time is the reason that I had to learn what I know about training was because I did bench 500 when I was 19. That's crazy. But I didn't bench 550 until I was 24.
Got it.
It took me 5 years of grinding my fucking nuts off to go up 10 more %. And then another 3-4 years to go up another 10%. The point is that you get to a certain strength level, no matter what that strength level is. It doesn't matter if it's 225 to 250 or 500 to 550 on the bench. Those jumps are oftentimes educational purposed.
I believe that.
Meaning you don't know what the fuck you need right now at this particular time, and therefore your body's going to fight every step of the way to get better, which means the intensity is not the trick. It's the focus of where you're putting your energy at what exercise at what time. So if my arms are weak, but I keep focusing on pecs and shoulders, let's just use an example, then my bench is not going to move. I might feel better. I might look better. I might even occasionally break a PR in a weird lift. But when I go to the contest, it doesn't transfer. And that's the trick with Conjugate is a direct swallowing of pride to understanding you don't train what you like anymore. You train what you need.
Yeah, and the shit that's hard.
And the shit that you don't want to do.
We just went through a whole deficit cycle, and because deficit, conventional, there ain't all these guys it's hard for fucking every one of my fucking guys, right? It's like, so you go deficit, we went straight weight, a red, a black, and then double reds. That was our 4-week wave. But you could see guys get better each week and more comfortable. Next week, we're going to take a weight and see how we feel. And it's like, I went to a couple of the guys. I'm like, dude, I know you're good at sumo, but you need to go through this in a conventional manner. Give your hips a little break. Start to work on your back. And that's the thing is, I know Louie would always talk about fucking doing good mornings. Guys didn't want to do them, but they made you fucking mean and strong. Hurts half the guys sometimes though too, and I can't really program them for the gen pop either.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those things where it's that if you make a fucking record there, that you're gonna feel.
Well, and the good morning too is if you think about most people's weaknesses, it's gonna glare it
big time.
If your hamstrings are not equal to your quads, you're gonna see it in a good morning because you're gonna bend your knee at the bottom really far and turn it into a squat. If it's your glutes, you're gonna have problems at 3/4 of the way up locking it out. And if it's your lower back's going to get fucking injured doing it. Yeah. So, of course, if most people's posterior is one section of that's their weakness, they don't want to touch good mornings.
Yeah. It's going to showcase it big time.
Right. So we utilize, but there's a point of no return. And this is at the world-class level. I got up to where I could do 585 for a triple on good mornings, and it was cake. But after that, I'm not even shitting you. Never bothered me.
Yeah.
But here's the point, though, is that when I could do 500 for 3, it transferred over to my deadlift. When I moved it up another almost 100 pounds,
Point of no return.
It only gave me 15 or 20 more pounds on my PR. So there's a point where, again, my posterior chain wasn't my weakness anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so that's the hardest part, I think, with the Conjugate, and why everybody wants a more simplistic view of how to train, is that Conjugate forces you to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it all the time to create a more educated base. But the problem is as we know, strength training doesn't necessarily attract the smartest a smart guy is going to go, why am I going to put all this time and energy into this and win a medal when I can put all this time and energy into this and make $100,000 a year?
Yeah, that's true.
And that makes sense. But for some of us, we don't care about that. We want to be the best we can be.
Yeah.
But that's rare.
Yeah, it is
You
rare.
know, and I mean, I see it every day with everybody that I train. You know, they want to get to a certain point, but what are you willing to give up to be there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I spent my entire 20s not giving two shits about how much money I had. It was all about breaking world records.
Yeah.
Period. Even into my 30s, which I could have made way more money. I could have done way different things, turned down huge jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I only knew I had one window of my genetic prime.
Yeah.
And I didn't give a shit how much money it was. You don't buy that back.
You can't. No, that's legitimacy that you can't purchase. Well, mine's the opposite, right? Because I bounced back and forth between bodybuilding and powerlifting so much too, and the fitness shit I used to do, I thought my game was going to be outlasting motherfuckers. That I would be able to get my records as masters, which is what I'm starting to be able to like kind of sniff a little bit. And so I think my run's going to be late because I honestly think genetically, when I was younger, I couldn't compete. I wasn't strong enough, especially because I didn't just focus on that. Sure. But it's like now I'm looking at like, and inspired by older athletes too, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm seeing these, dude, my one squat as a master, I'm 16th overall tested, not tested. Jason Coker's number 1. I'm on the same screen. Like to me, that's like, you know, in Barnelli, who's a fucking Angelo Barnelli, fucking Westside legend back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. So I start to see like, all right, G, you just got to stay in the game a little longer if that's the way. But so it's like, and those are super important to me. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of people never realize about me. These dudes do because they're with me all the time. But like, it's so important to me, just as important as you said. But it was like, that's why I was willing to get up at fucking 3 a.m. because I couldn't fit it in any other time. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the business took away or when I would bounce back and forth. But at the end of the day, powerlifting and the numbers, and I think that's why Louis took time with me, is because he knew once he actually got to know me how much I really cared about it. Sure. And that's why I'm still doing it, because I've squatted 700 the first time in 2010 and then just squat at 220, and then I just squatted 694 and a half at 181, you know, fucking this year, a couple months ago, a day after a bodybuilding show. Sure. And so it's like one of those things where what I liked about any of those guys, George, Mike Wolf, Tony, the list goes on, Joe Bayless, any of these guys have helped me. It's like, because I just wasn't going nowhere. They're like, all right, this isn't like a dude that just came over because he wanted to be able to say he stepped in the gym one day. Every time I'd go to meet, I'd call Mike, I'd call Tony, George, hey, I need some help with bench. Can I start coming on Sundays again? You know, I couldn't go there all the time, nor did I even act like I was a full-time member, but I was just around for like a decade off and on. And the first time when I hurt my shoulder real bad, he was top 3 guys on the list I went to see. I didn't go to I went to Serrano, but he's his own type of doctor. I saw Serrano, I went and saw Louis, and I went and saw Matt. You know what I mean? These guys are leading the charge on so many ways, and they're all right here. And so it's, I don't know, I just feel blessed to have the resources that are in Columbus. And when I moved here, I had no clue any of it was here. I didn't know the Arnold Classic was here. I didn't know Westside Barbell was here. Yeah. I wish I did it on purpose.
See, mine was backwards because I was already a good lifter in Indiana, but only reason I knew Louis was because of Powerlifting USA.
There you go.
And I was reading the articles, and they were starting to blow my mind because I'm looking at it going, he's talking about getting faster to get stronger. And that, in my mind, as a teenager, made no sense. But it intrigued me. And then I started seeing things on chains, things that I just didn't have access to at the time. And so I come over to the Arnold around 98. And I come over with a friend that worked with my mom. And we see George and Louis and Dave Tate and everybody walking out of the Arnold when they had the bench bash for cash in the main stage. And he pushes me over. He goes, dude, you got to go talk to him. You've maxed out what you're going to be able to do in Indiana. you need to be around guys that are stronger than you. And so I finally push over and ask him, you're talking, I was a bigger kid for that age, but you're talking guys in this group that's walking out, 6 or 8 of them, all of them are world record holders. Yeah. All of them are the guys you see in the magazine pictures. It's like, it's intimidating. And so I go up and talk to Louis, and he's like, yeah, you seem pretty strong. Why don't you come by sometime, So the trip to Columbus, I was driving 3 hours one way to train with the guys. And once Louis saw I do that month in and month out, he started to realize not only was I strong, I was fucking serious, and he started to get the stars in his eyes because he knew I was in school for it.
Yeah.
So now it gives him validity, because now between 05 and 07, I'm writing most of the articles, whether it's my name or Louis' name, on them.
Yeah.
Because I had the science background. And I could write very similar to what Louis wrote. Mm-hmm. And it was, it was an interesting time. It definitely opened up my mind. But that's the exact reason I moved here.
Yeah.
It just ended up being fire departments, and I would say for the Midwest, Columbus is probably the best economy as far as a city is concerned in a 300-mile radius of here.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're West Virginia, Western PA, Southern Michigan, Indiana, maybe Eastern Illinois, Kentucky, Columbus is the place to be as far as economy is concerned. And I would say 10 years ago, lifters.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't say now that it has the same mystique that it had in 2003. Yeah. Just because, Louis' gym was still in its prime at that time. But, you still got Dave, you still got you still got me.
Rogue.
You got Rogue.
You know what I mean? So it's like it just keeps stacking up of what's here in the Arnold Classic still, too. I know all the guys got some questions, whether it's stories, whether it's training questions. Cole, I know you had some questions.
So, me, myself, and Treway over there, we're big bench guys, right? And you've been able to bench 500, for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So
20 years.
Yeah. And speed work is one of the more interesting things that we talk about, because I personally love speed work. I was watching your stuff. I was watching how you're doing and everything like that. Loading up the bar fast. Some guys don't want to do it. They don't believe in it. So should people be doing speed work on
these
bench?
guys are all raw lifters here too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a raw lifter for almost 10 years.
Well, that
now.
was the thing, is the old guys were raw lifters and they just threw gear on before the meet.
Yeah,
a lot of people
that's what people don't realize
Yeah.
is like George, and I watched George Halbert bench 630 at 220 raw when he did 766 in a shirt.
I watched him one Sunday, no shit, go 275 double purples, and it was faster than I think I could bench a plate. And I was in fucking shock, man.
He was literally probably, other than Maddox, the most explosive guy off the chest I've ever seen. The reason that you train speed work, whether you want to believe it or not, is because
I love that.
is because of the force equation. So acceleration is one of the key components to force output. So if all you believe is the M part of the equation, so F equals M times A, simplistic in a simplistic fashion, the M is how much mass. So that means heavy. The A means the accelerative property of that to create force. So when you're training the speed bench, there's a handful of things that it does, and the reason it's important. One, internal, external motor unit coordination. So can the muscle coordinate itself and coordinate in synchronicity with all the other muscles around it? So it's a way to get to high force output without mass. So if you look at the old Bulgarian system that was developed somewhere in the 60s all the way to the 70s, they didn't believe in speed work either. Max, 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 all the time, heavy as fuck. But the problem is they'd start off with 2,000 lifters in one class, and they'd break it down until there was about 3 left for the Olympics. Because all
three that can actually withstand the volume.
They can withstand it. So basically they're looking for the Bo Jacksons.
Yep.
Which none of us are.
Correct.
Okay, so we just get that out in the open here. Right? I mean,
I wish I was Deion Sanders, but I'm not.
Don't we all? So the thing of it is that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Internal, external motor unit coordination. The second thing is the ability to innervate fibers at a faster rate. So if you were to look at the graph of when it would take to get to maximal motor unit recruitment, the average person is going to have to strain on something from anywhere from 4 to 6 seconds before maximal recruitment is attained. When you train speed work, you get to those motor units faster, which gives you a better chance in order to accomplish the weight. Because as Louis would tell you, and I would tell you, maximum weights, what happens is you eventually run out of time to be able to complete the fucking lift. So if you have to say 500 on the bench and you can move it with ferocity, you're beating it because you're beating it with less time. To get to those motor units, you have to get there faster. So the point is, it's kind of like
Can't lift big weights slow.
It's hard to win a 100-meter dash if the first 50 meters you're just building up speed.
There you go.
Right? And then you're only fast at the very end. What you need to be able to do is, boom, get out of the gate and then sustain that pressure for 8-9 seconds. It's the same thing with a fucking squat. If you can get to maximum motor unit recruitment at a quick fashion, which is all neurological, it's not at the cell, it's at the neuron. Once that happens, then you can innervate fibers quicker, and now you're stronger because you can complete weights faster. That's why you do speed work.
I'm fucking smarter
so-
right now.
that's
I am
so-
fucking smarter
and you know
right
what?
now.
And you know what? Whenever
this is the fuck I'm talking about, Matt.
Whenever I bench 350 at 81 down at the Edison meet,
Yeah.
I attribute to benching that because of speed work, because I knew I was fast off my chest, and if I got the lift, the 350 was fast. If I got it fast up to right here, I could easily lock it out.
That's
you
why
go.
they bang all the
Yeah.
triceps.
You'd already
to
created.
finish
Now
it.
the third thing is you're creating compensatory acceleration, which was Dr. Fred Hatfield talked about for years, and that is quickness beats heavy weights. So why I always use this analogy. It makes perfect sense to me, and will to you guys too. If you're driving your car down the highway and you got the cruise set at 65, why does it get better gas miles than in the city? It's already moving. Okay. Now here's the thing. If I'm applying the brakes down the highway, and let's just say the cruise control won't shut off, it just tries to maintain speed, how much harder does it have to work? This is why bands and chains are needed for speed work, because you create so much compensatory acceleration that you miss part of the strength curve because you've already beat the weight, and now it's just flying to the top, which we know heavyweights do not do.
Yeah.
So when you hook a band and a chain onto something, you're actually changing the force velocity curve and forcing the muscles to basically keep accelerating while the brakes are being applied.
Got it.
So the muscles work harder for the same amount of reps. Now here's where people screw up. When you do speed work, right when you're done, all of your accessory work needs to go down into tempos, i.e. 3-3, 5-5. You've already smashed that neurological conjunction with the fast fibers. Now you need to slow down and fix your grinding power with the accessory muscles that you think are going to be the weakest link, which is probably lats and triceps.
When you say 3-3-5-5, you mean like tempos like 1, 2, 3?
So like 1,
I got it.
2,
Okay.
3.
Yeah,
So if I was
making
doing tricep push downs, instead of
Yeah.
just getting them
Slow.
done, I would 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
I got it.
Because I've already done this contraction
Yep.
at maximum. So the body's got enough information to get better doing that. Now you have to change the book.
Yeah.
Give the muscle a different book to read, and now you'll have higher progression.
Makes
So
sense.
the problem with speed work is you'll start to see, if you back away and don't watch anybody, that they start to do too much quickness with everything that day, and they're not focusing on building the grinding power, which is the max effort day for sure.
Yeah.
But you have to isolate it in those muscle groups, even that workout. So if you watch me do triceps on speed day, I will do them very slow, because what I'll know is when I max, it's going to be like, boom, here,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Yep.
Well, if you're only good at pow, then what ends up happening is
When
it
you ain't got
doesn't-
pow.
it doesn't seem transferable, but it is on a secondary on the backside. So
I've never heard anybody explain it that way.
does it make
great.
sense?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. It makes
I
a ton
also
of sense.
I also think that it helps with like technique. Like whenever
Well,
I was
you're
doing speed work,
practicing, yeah.
every time I would set up, I would practice my setup, practice the arch, get set up. That helped me out a ton.
Talk to me about stretch reflex then too, because
Yeah.
that's the one thing that a lot of people like Ramos and George would talk to me about. And I watched, I think even like a couple years ago, George still was benching like 500. It would just be like a fucking spring, dude. The way he would load it, and it would be like he'd start it.
Well, back to your question before that
Yeah.
leads into that really well. In my opinion, on a basic standard, there's 3 ways you can make something more difficult, i.e., give you more benefit. You can make it heavier, you can make it faster, or you can make it awkward.
Yeah.
So if I do chaotic training, it teaches me to stay tight, but my form has to be perfect, because if I fuck up,
You eat it.
say I'm doing hanging kettlebells, right, I'm going to eat the fucking floor.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, if I do something insanely fast, to do that, the motor pattern has to be perfect, because it's so quick, it's almost instinctive. So the speed work teaches you to have instinctive perfection of motor pattern. That's the 4th thing that speed work does, right? So back to your question on stretch reflex. Muscle action, we all think, I mean, most people, and I even did before I was highly educated, that Muscle action is the spindles grabbing each other and pulling, actus and myosin. Cross bridge, which is basically fingers grabbing and pulling at microscopic levels.
I didn't know that, but I know it. Good.
To cause contraction. So basically you have the sliding filament theory. So that basically means this part grabs this and pulls chemically, either concentrically or eccentrically, to make you move. Stretch reflex is actually 30 to 40% of your actual strength, which does not really entail actus and myosin cross bridging.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to get at is that the tendon itself stores energy like a coil.
Got it.
Like a big car.
That's what it feels when you hit it right, too.
Like a car spring. That is neurological control of soft tissue, not muscle. But it works with muscle. So why are these NBA basketball players have these amazing verticals and their fucking calves
are little as hell.
Smaller than my wrist?
Yeah.
It's all tendon.
Got it.
So the tendon actually stores kinetic energy and can retrieve it or not retrieve it based on two factors, trainability and genetics.
Okay.
So some people just naturally have it. Other people have to work for it, and sometimes they're never going to be any good at it. I mean, how many guys you've seen that are strong, but they can't dunk?
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
They can dunk, but they're weak as dog shit.
Or I would just see, like, I think once I felt it load up once, I was like, oh, wait, that's different. Like, I remember just practicing, maybe this is good or bad, literally just loading the bar as fast as possible and dropping it.
Yeah.
Partly because I had a part of that shoulder was already ripped and I didn't realize it. So when I loaded the bar slow, I felt like I couldn't load it the right way. So I kind of did it on accident. I remember when I used to do it, I'd take 315 out and I just like this. And it would literally, as soon as they'd say press, return right back just as fucking fast. And I felt like I wasn't even using any muscle power.
So what you're doing is if you're skilled, like you watch Maddox do it, he takes, 780 and just drops it.
Yeah.
Now, the reason he's doing that is for two reasons. One, he's storing an immense amount of kinetic energy, actually more than what the bar weighs. So
which is fucking crazy.
Think about this, right? Let's just say this phone weighs 5 pounds.
Yeah.
And I place it on my knee, right? No big deal. But if I take it 6 feet up and drop it, it probably breaks my knee. It's the same weight.
It's
velocity. So when you're training speed work, going down in a high velocity is going to help you learn to store kinetic energy if it's the proper percentage of weight. But here's the thing.
No one does the proper percentage, I guarantee.
Nobody does the proper percentage, number one. And number two, what's the goal? So for most people listening, they're going to be like, well, I want to build muscle. Well, what we're talking about right now will not build any type of bodybuilding or aesthetic type muscle. So how do you synchronize both things to help with all factors? Here's how you do it. Controlled eccentrics with pauses with fast concentric. Now you have the explosive power on the upward phase, but you have the time under tension on the downward phase. So now you're getting all the muscle benefit, and then on the way up, you're getting all the tendon benefit. So it just depends on what you're trying to work for. Now, let's say he's a wrestler and he doesn't want to weigh more than 165. So we would train him more velocity-based speed work, where we're trying to move quickly because we want to store kinetic energy. We don't want him to
stay in the weight class.
Exactly. So depending on if you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, get faster, or your goal is pure athleticism or aesthetics, you can make the skeleton of Conjugate work very well for you if you understand the pieces and parts that are involved.
That's fucking awesome.
Right?
This is great.
Why are people so scared of fucking Conjugate?
Because it's a realization that you have to work your weaknesses.
Yeah, that's plain.
I mean,
probably a
here's
lot
the
of
thing.
self-awareness.
It starts in school. It starts with our parents, and I'm not being an asshole, but here's the thing. If I'm a teacher in 3rd grade, and I understand that this kid really struggles at math, but he's really good at, say, English, I'm going to push him to his strengths, and I'm going to let him glide on his weaknesses. Conjugate's the exact reverse.
Yeah. If you want to get great, you got to fucking work.
Well, even that, but even if you want to be structurally sound, so say I like to train quads because I want my legs to look like Tom Platz, but I avoid my hamstrings because they suck when I train them and I hate them. Well, eventually that's going to hamper the growth of the front side because the back side's imbalanced. So the reason Conjugate is difficult is because your library of exercises needs to be vast.
Yeah, sure.
So that means your equipment availability needs to be fairly high. 1. 2, you have to know your weaknesses and be willing to train them. And 3, you have to have an understanding of basic physics in order to utilize the training properly. We're just talking about mass equals, force equals mass times acceleration. And most people have never even thought of training in that fashion.
No.
So my point is it brings out everyone's insecurities. And as we know, most people that get attracted to weights are hiding already from insecurities. So now
they're trying to be more, for sure.
Yeah, they're not alpha, so they want to be alpha.
Yeah,
they're not strong, so they want to be strong. So now I'm going to give you a program that's going to bring out all the things you hate and all the things you avoid.
It's so good.
It's exactly why nobody fucking does it.
Well, I'm obsessed with programming and learn mostly the stuff in the gym by trying stuff or reading or listening to you guys or learning stuff at Westside. But it's like, I know that the academic side's not super strong. So when I hear it broken down like that, a lot of times I feel things working and know they're working before I can explain them because I'm more of a practical application. I've always been that way.
Everything starts off in bro science. I don't give a fuck
Right.
what anybody says.
Thank you.
If you look at even the way the Russians were training, I'll give you a really good story that came firsthand from Verkhoshansky to me directly.
Fucking love it.
So for those of you that don't know, Verkhoshansky was a great Olympic athlete in the 40s. In the 50s, he gets his PhD in Master of Sport. So this dude's like freaky smart, okay? Like blows me, Louis, everybody away. The long end of the short end of the story is that we were talking, and I go, well, how did you figure out that lifting weights and jumping was going to help track? Because he's the dude that invented plyometrics.
Yeah.
So just think about that.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Trey ran track in college.
Yeah, this fucking guy invented plyometrics. And so he goes, it's a really interesting story. He goes, we didn't have a lot of funding because the Soviets at the early 50s were not really interested in the Olympics yet.
Got it.
They actually got interested in the Olympics from Paul Anderson. Paul Anderson came and did a lifting exhibition in Moscow in 1952 or 3.
He's like an 800-pound squatter or something, right?
1,200.
1,200. Okay.
He squatted 1,200.
I'll fuck myself.
So that's fine. But so in Vegas, so he was the first man to clean and press over 400 in the Olympics. Okay, so think about that.
Yeah.
Number 2, he squatted 1,000 pounds on the hour every hour for 8 hours in Vegas in the 50s
in
as
the 50s.
exhibitions.
In a probably pair of fucking boxer briefs.
Look him up and you'll lose your mind. He's the first guy to really not understand conjugate. People thought he was a fucking idiot. So here's what I'm saying. In his backyard, he dug out pits and would fill 60-gallon drums full of different amounts of concrete and then measure it and get it perfect. And so what he figured out is that training to a certain depth all the time was not advantageous to gaining long-term strength. So he'd have deep squats, high squats, and he would
They're just in his fucking yard.
So he's playing around with conjugate, but without knowing it. Starting off as just some hill jack in the back going, hey, I got an idea. Let's try this, right?
That's so good.
So the Soviets see Paul Anderson in all of his glory of like, holy fuck, this dude's insane.
Yeah.
That's when their attraction to the Olympic lifting and when they went to out-see and find Alexiev and all those other badasses, right? So long story short is, right before that happened, Verkhoshansky gets snowed out from track. Obviously, they're in fucking Russia.
Yeah.
The winners,
Some rocky shit.
The winners make ours look like the fucking Bahamas, I'm sure. And so they can't go practice any of their sports out on the track, and they don't have indoor tracks.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, I guess we're just going to make do with the time we have. And we had a basement that had connected to the barracks, a weight room and some plyo boxes. So they're playing with this, and the winter's bad for, I think he said, 3 to 5 weeks. They're not doing any sports-specific shit at all. They go back out to the track when the weather clears, and within a week or two, everybody does better. And he's like, what the fuck? Because before that, everything's specific.
Yeah, of
you want to
course.
be a triple jumper, what do you do? Triple jump all the fucking time. If you want to be a pole vaulter, you pole vault all the fucking time. He didn't have access to it, so he's doing jumps and barbell squats and some different plyometrics, comes back, and all the guys are better at their sport. The beginning of conjugate and cross-training evolves. So as they sense this, and as Zatsiorsky has, or Verkhoshansky has the background and PhD, he's not only experimenting, he's studying at a high level. And so as this progresses, within the next 5 to 6 years, they have 1,000 researchers at Moscow alone for strength sports.
Wow.
1,000. So 1,000 guys in each little area.
That's all they're doing all day.
Physiology, nutrition, biomechanics. I mean, all these little areas they're focusing and studying with Zatsiorsky, Verkhoshansky, and Medvedev at the very top. So Medvedev was kind of more of a static.
Rocky IV was happening, basically.
Yeah, but reversed.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything. They had all this medical science stuff they were doing, but their training halls were like your gym and my gym. Yeah. They're pretty basic, and an average person walked in and go, you guys have world record holders here?
Yeah.
You know, kind of like when you first walk into Westside.
Yeah.
I think this place is a shithole. There's no way there's guys
like all the weights are on the ground.
Right? So that's how it started, and that's how Verkhoshansky first figured out that specifically training for a common goal is not necessarily the best way to do it. You need to figure out the roundabout way to really create the true performance base that you possibly could achieve. And so that's where it starts.
It's fucking unbelievable. I always the other thing too that we talk about kind of a lot is the whole RPE thing. And I know that people are rating their exertion or whatever, but I think the reason why I like Conjugate is partly because of the way my brain works too, is that I know it's this variation and I'm going to give you 100% of what I got today. Sure. And yes, I'm going to try to beat it by a chip, and I probably have an old PR, and maybe I have more of a newer one because I'm coming off injury, whatever. There's all those things at play, right? But I think that I just could understand I'm going to give you maximum effort at that deficit or this lift, and I'm going to give you, and I'm trying to beat that fucking guy and this guy, and that I'm not really worried to say, well, I'm going to stop at an 8 today. Now, there might be like I'm going to cut one short because I got this going on or this bugging me, and so maybe you're doing that, but I don't know how you feel about that whole situation. I fucking hate it, but maybe I don't know. What's your view on that in general?
Well,
because I'm trying not. I feel like people are getting fucking softer out here, bro.
They are. RPE is the best and worst thing that could possibly happen. And I actually have a chapter I'm writing in my new book for it. I believe that as a beginner and intermediate lifter, that you probably need to base your things on percentages, and the reason being is you don't truly know what your strength is anyway.
Yeah.
So there's that in one side. Now, the other side is that self-regulation. So they know that from, I want to say around 65, they studied thousands of athletes in the Soviet Union and figured out that strength is variable up to 10% per day, no matter how many variables you straighten out. Meaning that, let's say today you can bench 405. Well, tomorrow you might only bench 370, and the day after that you might bench 415.
Just what it is.
It's not absolute. These percentages are never absolute because you're never perfect. And the reason
stressors,
is because
all kinds of shit.
Well, and training creates deficit. Yeah. So if you want super compensation, before you get better, you got to dig a fucking hole. If you want to make a mountain, you got to find the dirt. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you dig that hole, you should be at a deficit until you super compensate, i.e. deload. Then you see the mountain you've built.
Got it.
So again, how are you at 101% if you're training correctly? So what they realized is that max effort was actually anything above 90%.
I got it. Okay.
So although it's very good to try to push records in the beginning and intermediate stages, you have to plan your records as you become advanced, because you probably are at neurological maximum once you're good.
Yeah.
So again, if all of us go to the gym right now and we absolutely max squat, I'm probably going to hit 95% of my fibers, but some of you guys are only going to hit 75 no matter what you do.
Got it.
So who's more beat up? Me. Because my max is truly my max. But the problem is it may take 10 years of training before you can innervate those fibers. So you have these built-in neurological governors.
Yeah.
So, okay, your car, for example, has a computer. And in that computer, it sets a point where it realizes that the engine is going to fucking
perceived
explode.
Threat, right?
So let's say my engine redlines at 6,500 RPM. Well, at 6,500 RPM, the computer is going to fucking stall it because it's not going to let it go past that. Your body does the same fucking thing neurologically. Over time, as you train and become more comfortable with heavier weights, those governors start to shut off.
Ramos is explaining that to me because he saw me the last year or so, and he's like, there's a lot there, G. It's starting to click, and I can feel it as I'm going back into raw and all the bands. I mean, the bands this week were 460 pounds of bands, and you see the guys we do doubled up reds or blacks here just because it's easier than choking the bigger bands, and no one else can fucking do that. That's the thing is I would watch that stuff at Louis. I'm like, nobody following me online has this shit at home.
Well, I'll give you a story on that real quick. Yeah. So probably the craziest band squat I ever saw at Westside. It was me, Chuck, Vlad.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
squat 1200.
The first 1250 squatter.
Yeah.
And then also squatted 1150 and just knee wraps.
Yeah, he's insane.
Okay, yeah. Don't even. Dude's the baddest squatter of all time. Yeah. No question. especially super heavyweight. So me, him, and Greg Panora.
Yeah, Greg's
okay.
strong.
So and Greg was a 1,100-pound squatter at 242.
Yeah.
So we're all squatting together.
Nice squad.
We do 2 blues and a green.
Yeah.
Which is 550 pounds of true brand new band tension around a fucking monolith base.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that there
around
was
a 4x4.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was when I went there. I didn't realize all that shit was stacked up down there.
So
too.
I get there one time and I'm like, Louis, how much fucking band tension is this? Because it's going around a 6x6 piece of steel and then a 6x6 piece of wood, and I'm like, that's not how they're supposed to be.
Each blue is like 220.
And Chuck's like, I need the weight to be about what it is at the bottom. And I'm like, okay, fuck, here we go. So we start loading it up, and Greg and I do a plate. So now you're looking at 650. The first plate on the bar.
And no one takes quarters.
That's set fucking 1. Set 2, 2 plates. Now you're at 750. Set 3, you're at 3 plates, so it's supposed to be 325.
Yeah.
And it's fucking 725, set 3. Then it goes to 800. Then it goes to 900. This is doubles.
Yeah.
Then it goes to 1,000. So now me and Greg are starting to slowly tap. I think I get somewhere around that day, I get like 625 plate weight and 550 pounds of band. But I was already squatting close to 1,100.
Yeah.
Greg gets a little bit less than me just because of body weight.
Yeah.
And now we tap, and it's just Chuck and Vlad. And Vlad wants to beat Chuck just as bad as Chuck wants to beat Vlad. And Vlad's just slowly working his way up. He had not out-squatted Chuck yet.
He's a lot bigger than Chuck,
Huge.
too, right?
I mean, he's my height and weighs 360.
Yeah, that's why.
So he's a fucking goddamn, Russian tank.
Yeah.
And so the weight goes up to close to 800 bar weight with 550 pounds of band tension. So we have 800 pounds of plate weight, 2 blues and a green. And so anybody watching, I would ask you to just any way you can set up a single blue.
Oh my god!
Put it on a fucking squat bar and walk it out, and then double that, add a green, and add 800. I'll never see it again.
No.
Not
did you
level.
know when you were in that moment as a lifter, you like,
I knew.
I'm watching. Yeah, I knew you knew. That's why
I asked. I wish that this technology at that time would have been better, because there was no video.
Yeah.
And
you were witnessing like a historic squat workout that
So they had done the 700-ish weight, and boom. And Vlad's starting to really struggle. His body weight's better, so for band tension, him and Chuck kind of evened themselves out, because Chuck was so explosive, but Chuck could get out of control real fast.
Yeah.
Vlad was bigger, but was unused to the tensions. So they go to the next one, and I'm like, Vlad, you sure you want to do that, man? You're already above what you can squat. You've already shocked your central nervous system into the fucking stratosphere.
For sure.
No, I have to beat Chuck. And I was like, nobody beats. I was like, I'm thinking in my head, you're not going to beat him.
Yeah.
Because if
he'll ready to die.
Because if you get this, he's just going to put another fucking plate on. So Chuck does it first because he wants to set precedence.
Yeah.
So it's like 800 something with 550 pounds of band tension. He sits on the box and boom, then sits again, boom, and it looks like he's flexing so hard that mastodon squat bar is fucking hopping.
Yeah.
Like it's 585 on a regular bench bar, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, right? So he racks it, and he's all fucking bleeding, and so Vlad gets under there, and he picks it up and just fucking boom to the box, staples him. And so we're all picking it up, and we're all insanely strong. We can barely get it back in the fucking rack. And I'm like, he's like, give me 5 minutes, want to try again.
Bad idea.
And I'm like, don't fucking do that. I'm like, we got a pin pull. Because Chuck, when he'd get ready for me, always wanted to feel like berserk weights like right below the knee. Jeez. And I was never good at pin pulls. I was always better off the floor. And so Vlad's like, no, fuck you, do it again. So we put it back up there. We had to take the weights off, put it back. He gets crushed again. And then he goes, give me another 5 minutes. And I'm like, no, motherfucker, you're done.
Yeah.
And then finally Louis steps in and goes, nah, you need to stop. And so he finally stops, and he's pissed, and Chuck knew he got him.
Yeah.
So then we go to the pin pulls, and Vlad doesn't do that well at the pin pulls because his central nervous system is destroyed.
Yeah.
Chuck pulls like 1,010 from the knee.
Jeez.
Right? This is what gets fucked up. We go to the meet about 4 to 5 weeks later. This was the last meet I did at Westside. Vlad fucking smokes 1250 in the squat. Chuck bombs out.
Really?
And that's when I started to realize that Chuck was leaving everything he had in the gym and wasn't learning to taper and put all the energy into the meet. And Vlad would push himself, but Vlad, the 2 weeks before the meet, was like, need time down, relax.
Yeah.
And Chuck was like, no, man, I'm going in to work out, you know? And what I started to realize is there was timing to all of that. And although Vlad didn't do it correctly as far as the loading parameter, and Chuck was just to compete in the gym, that it fucked him up royally trying to beat a guy that probably if Chuck would have taken just the 7 plates, which would have been calculated to what he was going to try to squat, but he wanted to beat him in the gym. So this is where it gets complex, and you have to be careful. Is at the highest level, you have to balance competition with, again, nobody knows other than me and a handful of others and people listening now about that squat session. But everybody remembers Vlad squatting 1250 for the first time. My point is where are you putting your energy and what is it transferring to?
Sure.
And that was really, I learned a lot from Chuck, but one thing I learned was how to back off to make sure the numbers got better.
Yeah.
And that, again, at Westside, sometimes you learn more of what not to do than what to do.
Yeah, because there's that fine line. Like Ramos would tell me, he'd go, you know, if I didn't like have strippers sleeping in my car on Sundays and would have drank some protein shakes, like he goes, maybe I'd have done better. And I go, yeah, but I said I would argue that part of it was because you were so like
stress relieved.
That's why he went and, you know, total 2,000 at fucking 81 or whatever. Like there's part of the crazy that works in the favor and part of the crazy that maybe doesn't allow it to be as longevity wise.
Absolutely. And, you know, I would say that Westside probably had the biggest conglomeration of people that if they had all the focus they needed in the gym, but their lifestyle wasn't conducive for them. No bullshit. Jerry Obradovich would have been one of the strongest guys to ever live from Westside Barbell or in the world period if he wouldn't have been a drug addict at the time.
Exactly.
He literally, and I'm not busting his ass because he's a great guy, he was on a 2-week crack binge. Then they find him in a crack house. Louis personally goes and gets him out of a crack house, fucked up, cleans him up for 3 days. He goes and wins the Arnold Bench Bash for cash. What the
He's
fuck?
that gifted.
Like that badass.
Yeah.
Like you're a crackhead. You just came out of rehab.
And he probably just benched 700 pounds.
And he just walked out. I think it was like 744. It was their first bench press over like 725 ever at Westside Barbell off of a crack bench. I mean,
it's like you can't even make that up if you tried.
No. And that was just the first time I was slowly coming there. So I saw it all. And I was like, oh my God.
What world are we living in?
But I'll tell you when I knew where I was at and what was really going to go down and what it was going to take to get my goals was I want to say it was the 3rd or 4th time I went to train with Louis, and Louis is like, yeah, I'll be in the gym with you guys, but you know, I just got done getting my knee scoped, so I don't know what I'm going to do. Literally got this knee scope the day before we trained. Okay?
Of course.
So imagine you get fucking knee surgery, and then Corey's like the next day,
let's box squat.
Come in, box squat with us. You'd be like, fuck you. Not Louis. Yeah. Louis walks in, he's got bandages all over his knee. And he's like, hey, I don't know how good I feel, but I think I'll squat with you guys today. And I'm like, what? This dude just had a fucking knee surgery. He gets under there, and within the 3rd set or so, blood is just pouring down his calf.
Of course.
He's breaking the sutures.
Yeah, of course.
Or whatever the fuck they did. And it's just bleeding down his calf, and I can't stop but sit there and look and go, where the fuck am I?
Yeah.
This is like, I get about being hardcore.
Yeah.
This seems
There's
little
levels.
Extreme.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized how fucking psychotic he really was, and a handful of the guys were there.
So when I started, when I got to go pull with him one time, and it was like probably 2010. It was like when he was getting ready for his last meet, where he went like 805, 4.5, like 675. He like totaled something ridiculous at like 63. And we went up. Me and this other guy named Jason went up for a deadlift session, and Louis got them old purple briefs on. He's pulling. He's bleeding all over
those
the fucking.
For a little bit of a discussion, those purple briefs smelled like Conan's riding blanket.
Yeah, I'm sure, bro. Well, I'm getting to that story now.
Yeah.
So he's pulling, he's bleeding all over the fucking bar. Everyone, and I'm walking up to this bar, and I'm looking around like thinking, all right, I know I have to deadlift this, but there's a lot of blood on this fucking bar. And that kind of happens here now, but I didn't know any of these motherfuckers either.
Yeah.
So anyway, then he gets done pulling or whatever. He's bleeding out his nose, bleeding out. He's like, help me get these briefs off.
Yeah.
And me and Jason, we're pushing on, and Louis starts bleeding on Jason's arm. And Jason's looking at me, and we're basically like half-ass interns, like not even supposed to be there. He's looking at me like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I remember the first time seeing that shit because he was just bleeding down his knee on squats. But I remember we would deadlift, and he would scrape his shins or bleed on the bar from his nose. And then you'd go next. And then I'm thinking, I'd really like to get AIDS the cool way.
Yeah. I swear to you, that's what I thought too.
I don't know if this is the way I want to go down.
That's our quote.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I know the doctors aren't going to believe it.
Oh,
He's like, you got AIDS from a deadlift bar. Right. All right, let me check your butthole.
I remember thinking I'm about to catch something crazy up here.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, Danny, your turn for a question.
Yeah.
I don't know
How do you follow that up?
How do you segue that?
I just going back to longevity is what I keep thinking about when you said you've basically been injury free, excluding your groin. So and you said you've learned what not to do by your experiences at Westside. How is that kind of transferred over to with your athletes? What are some of the things that you are staples in your training program?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really kind of ties into what we were just saying. One, there's no need to go over, unless you're a lifter, there's no need to go over 90%.
Yeah.
90% is the breaking point where the body gets enough information to get better, but not so much information it overtrains.
Yeah.
That is step one. And what I learned is in max effort training, I do not fail. One, I don't want to teach my body to ever fail. And two, I can adjust it.
Yeah.
Because within reason, I can probably hit 90% any day.
Yep.
But that extra 10 to get to 100 is going to require super compensation. So if I push to 100% all the time, basically you're at maximum tension that all the tissue can handle
without going through super compensation.
Right.
I got you. Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
without going through deloading.
Yep.
To actually peak for a specific lift,
Yep.
which you don't want to do very often in the year.
Yep.
I would say at most 2 times. So that is one thing. The next thing is making sure that the accessory work and the mode of training exercise changes on a consistent basis so that the pressure gradients on each joint change weekly. So if I like to do, say, V-bar pushdowns, well, I'll use that one day. Then 72 hours later, it's a rope. 72 hours later, it's my hands are backwards. 72 hours later, it's overhead. My point is that almost, I would say 75% of the people that email me go, Matt, I really like your workouts and I like watching your Instagram shit, but those exercises you do, like say that tricep pushdown, they really affect my elbow. So I ask them, well, what other exercises you do? Well, I just do that one. Well, that's why your fucking elbows hurt, you dumbass.
They're fucking weak.
So if you do the exact same thing the exact same way all the time, you're creating specific mileage in that exact point.
Yeah.
But you can train that muscle in different angles, pressures, and resistances.
Yep.
Bands, chains, free weights, cables. They all have different levels of pressure, different what I would consider cams. Mm-hmm. Where the pressure is on a cable is even throughout the entire motion. Weights, due to acceleration, change. They're lighter at the top than they are at the bottom. The point is if you're changing those pressure gradients on the joints on a consistent basis, the body never really gets to overtrain at the joint. And that's why I truly believe my back, my knees, and my shoulders are still insanely healthy. Yes. Is because I move the movements around where they're specific enough to see transfer, but inspecific enough to reduce mileage.
Fucking
bang.
That was a banger.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Trayvon, what you got, buddy?
Banger. I'm more curious on how speed I guess directly transfers over to lifting, because for example, like Corey said, I ran track in college, and so I feel because of explosiveness and everything, I've always been I've been just good at deadlifting or squatting and stuff like that, because I've been fast with the barbell itself and stuff like that. So
and he read the Westside book in high school and did tons of hamstring work on his own too.
In high school
You're smarter than
for track season,
he was doing a 200 band leg,
I did that every day in high school, 200 band leg.
So you took it literally what he said.
Yeah.
I remember the first time going, I don't know how much of this to believe, because when I was first coming over there to Louie's place, Louie would write all the time about reverse hypers.
Yeah.
Putting 2 and 2 together, he was selling them, which I get.
Yeah.
And he's like, Mike Ruggiero just squatted 1,050 and he uses reverse hypers all the time, blah, blah, blah. And I finally get there and I get to be kind of friends with the guys. And I go, hey, Ruggiero, what's your volume on the week, because I want to get bigger like you. What do I need to do to get that shit? And he goes, man, don't tell Louie, but I don't ever do reverse hypers. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, whatever. He was writing about that because I don't read them. I'm not doing those. I go, why? He goes, my stomach's too big. He goes, when I lay on the machine, I feel like I'm going to fucking puke.
Yep.
And he was literally the biggest midsection. I mean, it wasn't fat either.
No.
He was just so big. And that's when I started to realize, I'm like, I got to be careful with what I'm reading and actually utilizing it verbatim. He's exactly right that the hamstrings are a weakness, but doing 200 of something every day, probably a little extreme, right?
Yep.
So
I want to tell you a Rogerio story. So
go
I
ahead.
had seen some of the old Westside videos, so I knew who he was. And I lived in Pataskala, close to the gym before.
Yeah, he lives out here this way somewhere.
Yeah, so one day I lived in this little log cabin, and I look out the window, and I see this big motherfucker sitting across the street just sweating. Like just sitting on a bucket.
him.
Yeah. Just sitting on a bucket sweating. And I'm looking, I'm like, man, I know that guy. Looks, and he's like 360.
Yeah.
He's fucking huge. And I started looking, I'm like, that's that fucking guy from the fucking Speed Squad video.
Yeah.
So I walk over, it was his wife's parents lived beside me, and I didn't know it.
Yep.
So then that was like, so I got over, I'm talking squats, I'm like talking to Mike Rogerio, just randomly was like literally next door to my house one day, and he was the nicest guy.
Oh, awesome.
He wasn't there anymore at that point, but he even just in a 15-minute conversation, I learned like 8 things. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, he's a good
but
dude.
yeah, there's no way he could probably be on hyper.
No, he
the
was
way he's
way
built.
too big. And, you know, he was probably even bigger than that when you saw him because his heyday was, I would say, between like 98 and 04.
Yeah.
And, but that's when I started to realize, like, okay, I'm going to read these books and I'm going to get a lot of information from them. But
You guys see what the guys actually do.
verbatim, a lot of things that we were doing wasn't necessarily written perfectly.
Yeah.
You know,
I never heard a guy, like when I would go on Fridays, because, you know, I was squatting with Tim Harold, Joe Bayless, those guys on Fridays, and I would be like, what percentage are we using for our dynamic work? And that's when I was like, they were like looking at me like, yeah, it was just fucking, and Gritter's screaming, and
they had lost all
yeah, that's my point.
conception of what percentages even meant.
Which is where I think, Matt, well, first off, none of our guys wear, you know, powerlifting equipment except for me from time to time.
Sure.
I had hurt, back to your point, like I squatted 700 for the first time. Then I knew I had more in me. So the next week I tried to squat 740 and I ripped my labrum.
There you go.
That was my first injury. So if I'd have been obviously deloading like a smart guy, which I didn't know at that time, this is fucking 15 years ago, whatever.
Sure.
But it's like that was injury one. And then, you know, before that.
Here's what's crazy is that labrum was probably already pissed.
Yes.
You just put the fucking last little axe in it.
I know I got 40 more in me,
But
which is more that Chuck approach.
Here's what you learn is that if you'd have gave it 6 or 8 weeks to recuperate, because soft tissue heals slower than muscle due to its non-vascular, you know, makeup, you would have fucking probably smoked 770.
Exactly.
So again, what the problem is just like everybody falls into that trap. Hey, I just benched 315. It was really easy. Let's try 325 next week. Your nervous system and your muscles are still damaged.
Yep.
So not only are you in a hole, now you're ready to get fucked up, which is another reason why you should always rotate your movements.
Yeah. No, it was a great lesson, but you know, what came out of it was, you know, and every time, and I've only been hurt a couple times, but it's like I start to learn, like, all right, well, how am I going to keep his joint together now? And that's where the lunges came from.
Yeah.
And so my GPP, I was like, all right, I've got to figure out how as I'm lighter, I can stay stronger, because I would go and do these photo shoots and I'd be super fucking weak because I would look good, but I wasn't strong. But I really wanted to compete. So I was like, I remember seeing Ronnie Coleman do like some shit. He wasn't even touch his knee or anything, but I was like, all right, he did some lunges. Like, I'll just go to the track and go around one time. And I went around the one time and I was like, my leg pump was fucking crazy. My hip felt good. I couldn't walk for like 10 fucking days because I wasn't even prepared for that. And then I started going back and doing it more often. And then it became like, as I was reading Louis' stuff, I'm like, I wonder if this is like my sled work because I need this. And then what also was crazy is, Matt, my metabolic rate went. And my hormones for being older felt like they were high. Like everything was pinging. I was like, I'm leaner,
so
I'm stronger, and my body's staying together.
So what that's telling you is that your weakness at that particular time was general physical capacity.
Correct.
But in reality, if the only problem I would say with the lunges is they worked well for you because your body weight was light.
Yeah.
If you were a bigger guy going for that, it would be tough, but two, it'd be hard on your joints.
Yeah.
And you were already athletic before you were strong.
So the older guys are scaling them, like Anthony Oliveira and Joe Bayless. They do like 100. Yeah. So they'll do sled and they say 100. And so it's like, to their point, they're like, we're not about to do 400, 800 meters. Sure. It's too fucking much. We weigh 250 or whatever. So what I'm seeing is some of the bigger guys are like, Louis talked about not training quads all the time.
Yep.
These guys are both built where they have big quads, and it's like, but they've neglected them a little bit. And with the lunge work, their hips and their quads have blown up a bit.
And they become more equal.
You got it. And Anthony's like, man, if I put my briefs on, they're fucking tight now. They feel good. So it's been interesting to see that little scale.
I would say that the guys at Westside, like you're talking about Bayless and those dudes, are going to be the only guys you ever see that their posterior chain is going to out maneuver their anterior chain.
Yeah, it's never that way.
So then if they bring it back and match it, now the strength goes through the roof.
Yeah, which is what they both kind of are saying.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
So, I mean, you have some good points there, but I think the big thing you hit on and you started to realize, which is what I realized with Wenning warm-ups, is that work capacity becomes a limiting factor to all of your gains because it's the limiting factor to your recuperation.
Yeah.
Now, you can do that with lunges or my warm-ups or whatever, but eventually how fit you are is how strong you can get.
It's a great segue to just overall like volume in general. That people, you talk about Wenning warm-ups doing 3, 4, 5 sets of 25 before you bench press at certain weights, pushing them up, different angles. And like I've always been, we do our conjugate max, we do whatever, then we do basically accessory, which is just bodybuilding shit. Sure. Because I'm a mix of, conjugate stuff, 70s bodybuilding, that's kind of what I learned. And so a lot of people were always tripping on like all the volume that we do and all the work capacity. And I'm like, but there's a reason why we've continued to look this way because the whole group's fucking yoked. The numbers continue to go up. There isn't a lot of injuries in our group too. I've actually kind of taken the brunt of a lot of that shit because I learned a lot, just like Lou did. And it's like, I just don't know why. Is it because it's difficult? Because it's hard? Like, why is everybody so fucking scared of actually doing volume? And they think that you got to take all this stuff or use all these drugs to just recover from this when I've never taken anything my whole life and I've done tons of fucking volume. And I know some of it's genetic, I get, but my work capacity has always been pretty high.
Well, here's the thing is it's hard because what you have to realize is that most people, if you look at the old Bulgarian, Soviet, Eastern Bloc techs, they don't develop the work base before they build the strength.
Okay.
And so what ends up happening is now their whole mindset is in the strength range.
Yeah.
And now they have to play catch up. Again, conjugate mindset. Where's my weakness? So if you're attacking things where guys can't breathe and they feel like shit, and initially, not until you work through it, initially it probably makes you weaker.
Yeah.
They're not willing to take the deficit, and they're not willing to take the ego punch in the dick.
Yeah.
Once that happens and then they don't care anymore, then everything starts to shine. But there is that refractory period.
Yeah, that adaptation phase that where they're going to get.
Most people will not stick with. I seen probably at least 200 firemen I put through Wenning warm-ups. And at first they just bitch at me. This is too much. I'm too tired.
Yeah.
Now I can't do my main lifts, blah, 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 blah. I said, shut the fuck up and just do it.
Yeah.
They do it for 6 months, and then we retest, and their max goes up 15% without testing the actual lift.
Yeah.
And then they're sold. They understand.
All the supporting shit's there.
But the only reason I've learned to experiment with them is because they don't necessarily have as much of a choice.
Yeah.
When I'm there, they got to do what I tell them.
Yeah. That's your job.
But when you're writing an article
Yeah.
where you're giving somebody this information, they don't know how to digest
They
it.
just think I'm fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Which partly true, but
Yeah. It was a mixture of, the Wenning warm-ups came from 2012. I do my first raw contest. I benched 600. But I didn't squat first. And then, so as I benched this 600, which I felt was the limiting factor to where is Dan Kovacs's total, the all-time world record raw, achievable.
Okay.
I knew if I could bench 600 raw, which I knew I was close anyway, but have to actually do it, then I knew the squat and the deadlift, because the deadlift with gear doesn't help.
yeah, no, it's completely.
All right, maybe a little bit in
I've pulled the same numbers both ways.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I would say that the only thing gear does really is keep you from getting beat up from it.
Yeah, I will tell you that when I train with powerlifting equipment, I'm not near as banged up.
No, because it stores more kinetic energy, it forces you to stay in good position.
Yeah.
If you got a good set of briefs or a suit on, you can't reach over and grab the bar incorrectly.
That's true.
It just won't let you.
Yeah.
So really why it keeps you from getting beat up is it forces technical proficiency.
Yeah, that's true. Same in squat too. Yeah.
So with that being said, I benched 600 and now I'm looking at the all-time total record, which is 2202. Keep in mind, I'm the only guy to go from equipped to raw and break world records in both.
Yeah, that's not common.
Right? No, it's impossible.
Oh, yeah.
Nearly, because they're two different sports. It's like who's won Formula One and NASCAR.
Yeah.
They're still driving fucking cars, but they're not the same.
No, I agree. That's why I've always explained when, basically a Gen Pop person is like, I don't understand the suits. I'm like, this is like an extreme version of it. That's basically the best way to explain it. And somebody like, well, it's easy because you put a suit on. I'm like, all are you on rack 700 pounds?
You still got to hold it.
You still got to fucking squat
I
it.
said, when people ask me all the time when I did the 1197.6
Yeah.
world record, I was like, was in gear. I was like, we can put that on the bar and you can just get it up out of the rack anytime you want.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
Because I picked that up and I felt my femurs bow. And I still blocked it out and squatted. I mean, literally. I remember Ed Cohen's there.
Yeah.
It's in Chicago. And I've got my suit on and I'm a fucking bloated like 316.
So good.
Just weighed in at 308. And it took me forever to weigh that, and I even in a bad way. But that was just more bloated than I was fat.
Yeah.
I was just thick. And so Eddie's wrapping my knee, and I got to tell him to back the knee wrap off because he's got it so fucking tight that I can't feel my feet. And I'm like,
That's a shitty feeling.
for the 20 or 50 pounds that knee wrap's going to help, I'd rather feel my feet underneath me with 1,200.
Yeah.
Because balance is more important than having the spring.
Yeah.
With those kind of weights. Because you're talking, 4.5, 5 times body weight. I mean, whatever the fuck it is insane. And I remember crawling under the bar, and I'm trying not to look at it because, with 1,200, you got 150 kilo plates and then 45s, and it's like this much weight on each side of the bar, and on a Mastodon, it's bent, and you're just like, holy fuck, right? Like it's a mind fuck at that point.
Yeah.
So I get underneath there and I pick it up, and as soon as I pick it up, I felt my femurs go. Like it wasn't a muscle feel.
No.
It was something I had never felt before. I picked it up and I could feel my femurs flex. And that's when I did that squat and racked it, and I don't remember doing the squat. The blood pressure was so high when I picked it up out of the rack, I cracked a bunch of blood vessels in my eyes just picking it up, and then I was bleeding out of both nostrils out of the rack just to lift it out of the rack.
Pressure.
And after that point, I realized I didn't have the ball sack to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, what else you got to prove after
Nothing
that?
at that point other than just die.
Yeah.
So, 2012, that was 11. So 2012, I benched 600 with George.
Yeah.
And me and George and I can't remember who else was training with us at the time. We go to a local meet. It was over close to where Westside was. It was like at a Y, and I benched 600. And I sit down with George, and I'm like, I can take Kovacs's record for sure. So 2013, I do my first USPA walked out meet, no knee sleeves, belt only.
Okay.
I didn't want anybody to say fucking shit.
Yeah.
Because
they're coming right at you.
Well, the whole asterisk of that was, Conjugate only works for equipped lifters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Okay. So the first time I go to a raw meet, I hit the third highest total of all time, my first raw meet.
Fuck off, everybody.
And I'm within 70 pounds of the world record. So I only need 70 more pounds in 3 lifts. So I squat like 788 because when I get there, I don't realize the USPA is a walkout meet.
Yeah, that's
So now I got to walk it
different.
out. But I came from the IPF, so it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
So I walk out like 788, dunk it. I just posted a picture on my Instagram.
Yeah, I
of
saw
it.
that.
Ass deep, shin straight as fuck.
Yeah.
Fucking raw, right? Oh, that technique doesn't work raw.
Yeah,
okay.
of course.
So I do that, but what I noticed was I got to the bench, right? And I felt my training, I had benched 565 for a triple in training. So I'm like, I got 611. Easy. Just thinking about it. Well, after the squat, my ass is fucking handed to me. I'm tired. So I go to the squat, I go to the bench press, I smack like 5 1/4 as a warm up, then go to like 572. And the 572's got like this little like hiccup. Like I get it, but it's heavy at the top.
Yeah.
Something's off. So I try like 606 instead of 611, and it fucking tanks me. And I'm thinking, what the fuck, right? So I pull like 750. I hit the 7th highest total or 3rd highest total of all time. And I'm driving home, and I'm like, the first initial thought process is you're not strong enough. You just need to get stronger.
Yeah.
But then I start thinking, like, I'm not fucking, like that squat kicked my ass.
Yeah.
And
We're
now
in
my
shape.
deadlift's down 20, 30, and because it's raw.
Yep.
And then my bench is down 30, 40 pounds. So I'm thinking, well, fuck, if I can just figure out how to get those numbers to be not deficient after a heavy squat.
Yeah.
Because remember, the world record in the squat was only 822. Right. So I'm already at 788, meet 1.
Yeah.
And so I go back home with this idea. I had just gotten back home from speaking in Australia, and there was this PhD student talking about pre-fatigue and performance enhancement. And they were doing all of these exercises, strength exercises, before rugby practices, and they were noticing higher EMG results, i.e. the nervous system was becoming primed. We call it potentiation now.
Yep.
And so as I'm driving home, I'm like, man, what about that potentiation shit? So I call up my friend Flex Wheeler. And I'm like, hey, Flex, if you were going to try to do stuff to just put on a little bit more muscle mass and get a little bit more condition, what would your rep range be? And he goes, dude, I never got in better shape than doing 20s.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, okay, 20, 25 reps. There's the rep range. And now I'm starting to think GPP. Okay, how long should I need to train to get in better shape? I'm thinking, well, if I could do something that makes me a little tired but not too fucked up, very similar to squatting a monster weight, maybe I should do something like 4 sets of 25, because I'm guessing with no breaks, that'd be about 12 to 14 minutes, which if you look at GPP standards, that's pretty close. So I started digging into my Russian books and saw Alexiev would swing a kettlebell for 15 minutes before he Olympic lifted.
There you go.
And now I'm like, now I have the time range, the rep range, and I know how to fill that time parameter up with a certain amount of reps. So I just go after it. But I control the variables. I only do it on the bench press. So I'm using like 35-pound dumbbells. I'm a 600-pound bencher. 35-pound dumbbells for 4 sets of 25, lat pull downs and triceps. And I'm mixing and matching, but that's what I do. 8 months later, just experimenting with it on the bench, I go to Raw Unity in 14 when I was on the front cover of Mark Bell's magazine.
Oh, yeah. Power.
And I break the all-time world record in the squat with 832, thinking, okay, do I have this fatigue shit figured out? 606 was like, bow! I should have done 633 that day. I killed Milanichev, all of them, in the bench. Fucking smoked them. And I'm just thinking, motherfucker, right? This whole time.
A 3-piece work capacity thing.
It was a conditioning factor. So
wow.
now I have one of the highest subtotals in human history with 832 and 606. Raw. Like no wraps, nothing. And that was the meet I pulled my groin. So I was just lined up to have the all-time world record. I had to pull 722. My best at that time was 822. I had to pull 722 on the deadlift. I go up to my third attempt to pull it. I lock in. I'm in Florida. I'm not really realizing I'm dehydrated. I go to yank on it and bang, felt it pull right off the side of my pelvis. And I can't sit down. I can't really move. And I'm like, motherfucker, right? And the next day I'm black to my ankle from it tearing up here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And anyway, I rehab it, ended up breaking the world record, but the next year. But the point is that I had figured out that work capacity was the problem. So I apply it with the squat. The next year, I squat 870 in a belt only.
What was the if it was? First off, it's ridiculous. If it was, hey, let me just say, if it was press, lat, tricep, what was the squat kind of?
There's a squat. So I had just started to develop the first models of the belt squat.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm doing 4 sets of 25 on belt squat because my theory is I don't need the back mileage. I need the leg mass and I need the leg drive, but I don't want the spinal compression.
Like that.
So the belt squat becomes the primary factor. Then leg curls, hamstrings at different ranges. So I would do bands from the top, bands from the side, and then machines of any type I could find. And then it was usually a bracing movement, a plank, a winning plank, a band crunch, a leg raise, something that was going to force my midsection to really brace it. Because the first thing I noticed when I went from equipped to raw was the fact that my bracing capacity was less because I didn't have that suit around me.
No, I noticed that.
And at that same time, as you noticed, I was getting leaner. So I was starting to go talk to Serrano, and Serrano's like, look,
the waist's getting smaller.
I know you want to get stronger, and I know that's your goal, but we got to keep balancing this blood work. And by that time, my triglycerides genetically were starting to get a little out of control, and my blood sugar was creeping up just a tick. I was like 101. It wasn't insanely high, but it was going the wrong direction. He's like, you fix it now, we'll never be on meds. And I'm like, well, I just got to do what I got to do. So started eating cleaner. He started replacing a lot of my carbs with rice instead of gluten. We found out I had a dairy allergy. What was I doing to gain weight? I was drinking a gallon of chocolate milk a day.
Of course. I think everyone has a dairy allergy, to be honest,
right?
Matt.
But my point is like what it was doing to me was it's causing so much inflammation. But I think, well, I just got to do this and I'm gaining weight. I'm gaining fucking puffiness. I'm not getting any bigger. Right? And so I'm not getting any stronger.
Well, when you're that inflamed, it all obviously hinders your lifting too. Because the whole fucking joints
then you can't fucking recover. Because your body's just a fucking hot water balloon. And so
that's a great way to explain it.
So I start leaning out, and by 2016, now I got decent abs. And like I got veins, and I'm 280. So I was used to weighing like 310. Now I'm 280. No, maybe 16%, 17%. So I'm like at perfect level, right? And so I noticed that my core, because my waist went from when I was bigger, 42 down to 36.
Big difference.
That I had to figure out a way to make those muscles work harder because I didn't have the center mass.
Yeah.
So people look at these Olympic lifters like Alexei and go, well, that dude's just a big fat guy. No, he's not.
Yeah.
That dude is building that center corset to withstand 500-pound snatches. And you have to be big in the midsection to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's why, it's amazing, like, when I teach, like, a brand new lifter just how to force into their belt, just to create the load. Like, they go up 30 pounds, just like, wait a second, that felt way different. Once people I even had, there was a pro baseball guy that got onto some of my program stuff, and he had never even braced into a belt, like, on a front squat properly. And then he was like, what happens if I brace off the mound like that? It upped him like a few mile an hour just because he learned how to brace his core pushing off the fucking mound.
It's all about proprioception. Your body learns how to press against something.
Yeah.
And then I personally believe you take the belt off and now you know how to do it.
Yeah.
The belt kind of is that external factor that teaches you what to do.
True.
So I believe that training beltless is amazing.
Yep.
But if you learn to train with the belt sporadically, it helps your beltless training.
Yeah, for sure.
By far, because of your proprioception of those muscles.
Well, and I just came off doing the powerlifting meet and equipment, and then I was like, I want to get back raw again, and everything's starting to feel better. And so, yeah, it's funny. Like, we just took that squat on Wednesday against 460 pounds in bands. So we had the bow bar, right, and I take a plate. And I put a belt on for that set. I come out of the hole and it looks like the thing fucking stops, right? It stops, and then I just keep grinding because I'm used to being in, and I get through it. So I don't even take a quarter. I just jump a plate because I'm going to knee wrap on the next set.
Yeah.
So I know as soon as my body feels that little bit of tension, it's like I got a suit on again. My 1 against 2 plates is way fucking faster than that. But it's like once I add that brace, once I add a little bit, it's amazing how the body will like almost let off the governor or whatever you were talking before.
Yep.
And I'm noticing though, but the biggest key was I had to train my lower abs heavy again because I couldn't feel, it just didn't feel near the same.
And that's the biggest thing is, again, Conjugate, if you're doing the right exercises for you at the right time, it's teaching that, let's just say like it's teaching the belt.
Yeah.
You do a good morning, it's teaching you how to lock in your lower back with your glutes and your hamstrings.
Yeah.
If you're using a belt, it's teaching you how to fire the TVA and create that stabilization and stiffness. If you're using wrist wraps, it's telling you to keep your forearm tight.
Yeah.
So there are some advantages to putting that stuff on. I mean, when I squatted the 870 world record, I put my knee sleeves on myself, but just that little bit taught me to sit back a little farther and push out because I had this like awareness right here. But that shit was probably helping 20 pounds if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You get my point?
But it's almost like the kinetic tape thing. It's like once the body just feels that little bit, it'll fucking, or at least that's what they say. I don't know I don't know if that works or not.
I don't ever use it. Most people I see with kinetic tape on, I'm like, I don't think you need
But
that.
I think that's kind of the whole thought process around it, right? Once you feel like a little bit, because Bayless, I talked to him about it. He had some briefs that fucking looks like he had him since 1980. I'm like, dude, those things look like biker shorts. Like, I don't think he's like, just that little bit of tension though, it makes everything just feel like a little bit. So it's like, I think that's part of it. I want to talk about, I know that you and Louis hadn't had like a lot of interaction maybe the last few years before he passes away, but just talk about like, as he passes away, not only is it the body of work unbelievable, right? And you learn so much and then have taken it further with what you understand from the books and the knowledge that you put in the gym. But it's like, what's it kind of overall mean for the sport, kind of you personally? Like, I don't know, just get kind of some feedback.
I talked about this on Bell's podcast a couple weeks ago, and he asked me and was confused at first and then understood. And I think that with not only the passing of Louis, but the passing of Verkhoshansky, the passing of Medvedev, the guys we talked about that were the creators not only of Conjugate, but really understanding training in general. For sure. The passing of Dr. Fred Hatfield. Yep. I truly feel that 20 years ago, we were in a smarter place to work out.
I heard this clip. Yeah.
And the reason is because the guys that really understood, I mean, think about it. Verkhoshansky had multiple PhDs. Zatsiorsky, which is semi-retired right now, he's got to be close to 100 years old. He was the head of the Central Institute of Physical Culture in Moscow. He saw everything. Went to Bulgaria, studied those guys, helped the East Germans when they won all their records. Jeez. My point is that there's no money and there's no prize in anaerobic sports right now.
Yep.
Where they're getting rid of Olympic lifting in Olympics.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't stick.
My guesstimate is it will, because the only countries that are good at it are the ones that have long-term preparation coaches, China and Iran.
Yeah.
You have to almost be in a conjugate system, or not a conjugate system, a communist system, in order for long-term preparation to actually happen. For some reason, we've adapted that with gymnastics and hockey.
Yep.
But we've never adapted it with anything else. It's if you're good, you're good. And if you're not, well, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Louis took dudes that were shitbags that were going to jail and made them world record holders.
That's the one thing that always drew me is like, we can build our lifters. I can take a guy out of the bar and I can make him elite. And that because I knew I wasn't elite walking around.
Well, and that's what's amazing about powerlifting is that you may not be the most genetically gifted out of the gate, but if you train smart and you know what you're doing and you're focused and you have a long-term mentality, you can be very, very good. Yeah. You may not be the best ever, but you're going to be good. The guys that are best ever are going to be guys built like Hack and Eddie Cohen. Yep. You know, it's just only every once in a while. But the point is, what I love about powerlifting is if somebody really wants to put the drive, energy, work, and education in, they can be really good.
Facts. And that's enticing. That always was to me, because I'm like, just like anything else in my life, I just stay at it long enough. I'm going to figure things out. I learned things today. I'm going to learn things. That's why, like, I never was thought any close that I thought I knew everything. I'm like, all these old guys, I would bring in, like, if we couldn't figure out something in our group, like, Tony, come in and watch these guys. Anthony, come in and watch these guys. When Luke came by, I'll come back and watch it. Like, I was always open-minded. They're going to grab some because they've seen guys like Chuck, like, to me, it never made sense not to invite that in. You know what I mean?
So I think with that being lost, I think we're taking a step backwards. And I think the other thing that's made it go backwards is social media.
I agree with
Everybody wants that immediate, well, it's not about the complexity of the education of the program. I want it now. Yeah. And we all know that strength at a high level doesn't come now. And anybody trying to sell you that, you need to fucking run. Yeah. Because all he's going to set you up for is a wheelchair. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest problem. And so with those pioneers, I'm trying to step up. Hopefully this book is allotting me a PhD.
That's so cool.
So that'll be cool. I'm trying to do the best I can to be the next Hatfield, the next Louis with a higher education.
Your content's been amazing, Matt, that you've been putting out.
The content I'm really trying with the YouTube videos to give people as much as I can without throwing my business under the radar.
Sure, of course.
But the point is like, I don't see a lot of guys really doing that. They're either in fitness because they want to be famous or make money, which I understand. But you still have to have a core value that makes you underneath that shell very, very non-expendable. And the problem is, if you really dig deep on, I'd say 80% of the fitness guys that are famous right now, they have nothing to offer you. They're genetic freaks that have done super simplistic things and think that simplistic things are going to work for you. And in reality, that's just not the case. And so, I remember clean as day, one of the best things and I said this on Bill's podcast, I squat 700 at 20 years old. Okay, so that puts me at one of the top guys in the juniors in the country. Yeah. And Eddie comes up to me because it's close to Chicago, the meet, because I'm from Indiana. And he goes, man, that was an amazing squat. He goes, if you can hold on for another 6 or 8 years, you're going to be way over 800. Wait a minute. You just said 6 or 8 fucking years. Yeah. Not next meet.
Yeah. That's what everybody wants.
Not in 3 months. Yeah. But my point is what made me great was that I didn't give a two fucking shits on how long it was going to take to do it. I like to train. I like to know the process. Yeah. The end goal was not in my radar.
Sure.
That was just a byproduct of being good.
What I always try to explain too is that what you walk through and some of the history things that I told you about the gym, if that's not the backdrop, none of this other stuff happens anyway, Matt.
No.
The businesses don't grow. The online stuff doesn't work. Like, it's because I really care about it to that level. I fucking love it. So if Corey hits the lottery tomorrow, I'm still training the next day. Mm-hmm. I'm still like, and when guys come in and out of the crew, oh, I can't make it on this day or that, I'm going to be here tomorrow. Like, it's just what I do. Mm-hmm. And I do want to get better and I want to get stronger. And I still think I'm on the front side of things I can accomplish later in my career. And it's like, when people start to realize, and I'm not selling them some fast shit. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is somebody comes into my program, they're like, you want me to lunge? What? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like the things that, when people really dive in though, they're getting really quality results though, and there's long term.
But the problem is that the long term people, and you'd almost rather have them anyway.
Yeah.
But you look at all these guys. That's why you and I have a couple of 100,000 followers and not a couple million.
I know. That shit bugs me, but it is the truth, though.
Oh, I get frustrated
100%.
as fuck over it all the time.
Yeah.
But again, you know, you get the people that you should have anyway.
Agreed.
Because you could have 3 million, but if they're all shitheads,
Doesn't matter.
and they're not going to help you with anything, and they're just there for free shit, then what do you want them for anyway?
No, I agree with that.
And so my thing is I think, you know, I just got really lucky that I was in a schooling scenario where the best in the world were my teachers.
Yeah.
They were all the innovators in the NSCA.
At Ball State.
Yeah. So Dr. Kramer,
Yeah.
he was the founder of the NSCA.
Yep.
Dr. Pearson was the founder of the NSCA.
I forgot Kramer was there when you were there.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Dr. Volek, big nutrition guy, was there at the time, probably the top nutritionist in the country. My point is that I just got really lucky. Now, a lot of people don't know this background, but the reason that all those guys were at my home school was because we had contracts with NASA.
Oh,
So
shit.
NASA astronauts, whether you know it or not, after about 10 to 12 days in space, lose 50% of their strength because they're not in a gravitational field.
Yeah, they atrophy real fast.
They atrophy
right?
like that because this much and that much is the same amount of power in space. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
There is no gravity. So the muscles it's like being bedridden and not being able to move for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So we're trying to study how do we get them to exercise in small compartments. So Dr. Newton, Dr. Kramer, and all them were tasked with that with unlimited budget.
Wow.
So
I like that answer. Unlimited budget.
well, yeah, I mean, you're dealing with NASA and astronauts. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not going to be like
Yeah.
you're getting a budget from the high school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
High school boosters.
But as you know, around that time, they stopped flying a lot of astronauts, and then the funding dissipated, and then Kramer left and went to UConn.
Yep.
And they all dissipated. But at that time, I got really lucky, and that's why if you go on YouTube and type in Matt Wenning NSCA, I've spoke there 6 or 8 times. Why? Because all of my professors started that fucking shit. So it was an automatic shoe-in for that. But again, being at Ball State at the time I was at, being at Westside at the time I was at, and then being smart enough to really pick up what to use and what to throw away,
Yeah.
you have this perfect storm that probably nobody's going to be able to ever see again. I mean, in my opinion, because most people that are going to school right now for kinesiology or exercise science, what did their professors ever do?
Yeah, no, it's
Jack
true.
shit.
Yeah.
I mean, Kramer
I remember searching out Kramer when I was an MP for studies. I know he's
and
fucking boss.
Kramer's the most
He come
public.
to Ohio State.
Yeah.
He's there now. Yeah.
Well, he just retired.
Yeah.
He retired, I think, last year. But the point is that he's been the most publicated,
No question,
researcher in the fucking ever. He's in. I don't even want to know the number, but it's like 600 fucking papers.
Yeah.
It's something
it's
insane.
Unbelievable.
You look up strength training.
He's like the MJ of that shit, bro. 100%.
So long story short is being with those particular people at that particular time gave me a very good base to grow from if I was willing to learn.
Yeah.
You know.
And I always kind of think about my opportunities the same way, is that when I was able to hang around Westside enough to get a clue, because it made me a way different trainer, obviously, and understand, and then being able to specifically ask Arnold about a bunch of the shit they did. And that's why my kind of claim is I'm the only guy that really has got to learn from them each individually, personally. And that was, and also just understanding how they operate. See, I think that's the thing, is like learning from a book or a video is way different than learning in person, right?
Absolutely.
The first fucking time you walk into Westside, you realize there's a lot of different shit going on than what you was reading, right? And then on top of it, those intangibles. And it was the same with not only the stuff I picked up from Arnold when it comes to actual training, but just the way he moved.
The focus,
the fucking, the confidence, the fucking belief. It was like, I'm like, well, this is all part of it, right? And same with Louis. He believed that he could make anybody strong, right?
And that's where people get confused, I think, with Arnold, with Louis, with you and me at some point, is they look at us as our confidence is an ego thing. I have no fucking ego.
No.
But I'm confident enough to know that I can do whatever the fuck I want to do.
Facts.
And you don't. And that's why you are threatened by...
It's earned, bro.
Exactly.
And I've told that people
It's funny because I actually got to train with Arnold probably 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't get to have the same conversations as you, but O'Hearn introduced me to Arnold.
Awesome.
And then Arnold's
Who's another fucking OG.
He's like, I'm training some arms today. And I was like, can I come with you, man? And this is the funny story.
Yeah.
And it's quick. So he's standing around these fucking 5 jackasses. I have no idea who they are.
Yep.
They just look like they don't even work out. They're just hanging out with Arnold. And I'm thinking, what the fuck is this, right? Like, I would think an entourage of like former Olympians. You're thinking he's hanging out with Dorian and like, you know, I mean, because you don't know.
Yeah.
And this was like 2016. And so I walk in, and Mike's leaving because he trains really early like you do.
Yeah. I usually go and train with him when I go out there.
Which is amazing for me because 4:30 his time is 7:30
Yeah,
here.
you're like, I'm feeling great.
It's not early for me.
Yeah.
So I go down and drive and train with him, and Mike's leaving, and Arnold's walking in, and Arnold's talking to Mike for a minute. He introduces me, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking great, right?
So cool.
And so he's like, I was like, what are you doing today? He's like, well, I don't do that much anymore, but I'll do some arms. And I'm like, you mind if I just do some arms with you? He goes, yeah, whatever. So I walk with him, and I'm already tanked from training with Mike because I try to kick his ass.
Yeah.
You know how me and him compete.
Yeah.
He'll do something pretty impressive and see if I can beat it.
He's fucking strong. Yeah.
So the first time I tried going to the 520 for 24.
Yeah.
Beating the Platts record or whatever the fuck you want to say. Mike O'Hearn gets a hold of me about 2017. I'm still big. And he's like, how many times do you think you can do 500 on squats? I'm like, I don't know. I never fucking tried. He goes, give it a whirl. He goes, I'm going to try it tomorrow. You try it on your next leg day. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever.
That's their conversation.
So I put 250 kgs on the side, which is 505 with the squat bar. I do 20, and I'm fucking hurting pretty bad because my GPP isn't that level. And Mike gets like 18, and Stan tries it too and gets like 13.
Wow.
So now I beat him.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was pretty pumped, but I was so now I start hearing these rumors about this Tom Platts squat record. So I start looking it up, and then I asked Kaz about it because me and Kaz are pretty good friends.
That's cool.
Kaz is like, it was fake as fuck. He goes, number one, it was at a WWF thing.
Yeah.
He goes, so there's
it was on a stage, right? I remember that.
He said, and so he goes, the next problem is he had a fucking squat suit on.
Oh, does he wear like a single ply or something?
He was wearing a Z suit.
Okay. Yep.
And so I didn't care.
Yeah.
And I know his squat form is a lot different than mine. He does a very
super deep. Yeah.
But he's short and he's little and he's built like an Olympic lifter, really.
For sure.
And so I don't squat that way. And I know that if I did that way, there's no way I would have a chance. So I kept putting it off a year here, a year there. And I was like, I feel pretty good. I want to try it. And then something would come up, like I'd have to talk somewhere.
Yeah.
And finally, like 2 months ago, I just said, fuck it, I'm doing it. I don't give a shit how many I get.
Yeah.
So I put a singlet on, I do my knee sleeves and pick it up and ended up getting 520 for 24.
It's so good.
At 42 years old, and I sent it to Kaz, and Kaz was like, I'm fine. I'm glad you beat that motherfucker. Because he doesn't like Platts at all.
Got it.
I guess Platts has a pretty bad attitude about a lot of shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so then the next call I get's from Serrano.
Yeah.
And Serrano was like, glad you beat him too. Because I guess Meadows had bad conflicts with Platts. He wanted to always train with Platts. Meadows did, and he finally did. This is just rumor. I don't know if it's true. Sure. But I guess so Meadows met up with Platts and trained with him for like a week. And they were hitting it off, doing really well. And he said Platts was everything I thought he was, high intensity, real cool guy.
Yeah.
He said, I get home and a week later I get a bill for $10,000 in the mail.
For training with him.
Mm-hmm. What? And then he calls him. He's like, what's this all about? He goes, well, I taught you, blah, 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 and whatever. And he goes, dude, I'm not going to pay you $10,000 to come down there and train with you. And he said Tom Platts never talked to him again.
That's so weird.
And I was like, that's fucking weird.
So I was never a big Tom Platts fan. Obviously the squat videos I thought were amazing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people know there's 3 versions of Pumping Iron book, like original versions. There's the version with Ed Corney on it, which everyone's seen. There's a version with Arnold on it, and there's a weird version with Tom Platts on it. That's actually in color. And so I've kind of collect these things, and so I ended up with all 3 versions. Well, Ed just passed away, but I had his signature because he was always at the Arnold side for $20. Very cool, right? Arnold I obviously had because I worked with him, and I made sure when I was working with him I got it done. Tom Platts wasn't in anything, bro. I carried this book around at every fucking Olympia, every Arnold Classic, and I run into his ass just in passing at the Olympia like 3 years later, and I'm like bothering him like, look, dude, I've been carrying this fucking book around for years. Finally run into his ass and he signed it. So I think I'm one of the only people that have all 3 versions.
Probably.
That are actually signed.
Probably.
But the Tom Platts one was the fucking hardest one.
Yeah, he's kind of a recluse, but I think for the reason being you don't see him at those things is because he asks people to pay him exorbitant amounts of money to show up because he thinks he's a legend. And he is.
He is a legend.
It's just like anything else, though. Small circle legend.
Yes.
You're not a big circle legend.
No.
And so I just thought it was interesting. I had 4 or 5 people that I look up to call me and go, good thing you beat that motherfucker. And I was like, well, they were real weights. Anybody wants to come and see him, I marked him. I'll show them to you. I weighed them all in, So the point is like I was glad because it was another goal that I had to break. And I felt that I did a really good job at doing it. It was weird though. My conditioning was so good. What really gave out was every muscle in my body. It was almost like the lactate was just so fucking high in my entire body. I just started to shut down. Yeah. Because when I racked it at 24, what you didn't see is I'm on the ground for 15 minutes. I can't move. Like I literally cannot fucking move. My body's in like full, like just almost like death mode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I haven't felt that since that 1200 squat.
That's fucking amazing.
So I was impressed to do that, but it was kind of one of those things where I was kind of like, all right, what's the, maybe not the last hoorah, but what's the one thing I can take to the fucking moon that I think, you know, because what's his name? A couple guys just tried it and they couldn't even touch it. You know, Joe Sullivan tried it, got 20 and got hammered. A couple other guys have tried it. So to hit 24 at 42 years old,
bro,
at 6'1",
it's 500 pounds, bro.
Yeah, 520. You know, that's the other thing is like, well, Tom Platz had 525, and I was like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Like it's anything over 500 for that many reps is insane.
Insane.
You know what I mean? So whatever.
Well, Matt, first off, this was fucking amazing.
This is awesome.
It was. I learned a ton. I appreciate you spending the time. Where can everybody find you at, bud?
Well, you know, my website's winningstrength.com. We have online coaching where we customize everything.
Oh yeah.
All the online coaches I have all have master's degrees or NFL experience.
Oh wow.
That's sick.
Or they've worked with humongous people. I'll give you an example. My other guy, Colton, that does online coaching, he is the assistant track coach right now down south with the guy that they gave the medal for that beat Ben Johnson, Carl Lewis.
Okay.
He's working with Carl Lewis. The other guy's one of the head strength coaches at Kansas. The other guy played for the Dolphins and the Bengals, and me.
Fuck yeah.
That's pretty strong.
That's the online coaching.
Solid resume.
And you're really doing well with the equipment right now,
the equipment's doing really well. The manuals are doing amazing.
Yeah.
And the manuals are everything that I have personally done with myself and at least 100 people and all got positive results. It's not like some theory.
Yeah.
So we have a hypertrophy, power building, which is like a mixture, kind of like how we train. Pure powerlifting. We have cutting manuals. That got me down from 308 to 259 at like 11% body fat a couple of years ago. So basically what I do is I'm like, I'm doing this anyway. Why not write it the fuck down?
Yeah, I believe in that.
And then I just basically go find my references and show people, hey, look, this is the smartest way that I know how to train. Then the equipment, you know, we build the best belt squat. They're in a bunch of pro teams now.
That's cool.
We're at the Lakers, the Eagles, the Panthers, the Jaguars, the Bengals, just to name a few. Princeton has them. Kansas has them. It's
just to name a 10.
Yeah.
I fucking love it.
Yeah.
That's sick, bro.
So with that, and then, you know, obviously we have some merchandise stuff, but we don't do long, big lines of it. So I'll run a thing of shirts, and when they're sold out, they're sold out. But then we have the gym down in, so Real Matt Wenning at Instagram. Ludus Magnus Gym also has a page, and then you know, the website winningstrength.com.
What's your YouTube? Just Matt Wenning.
Winning Strength.
Okay.
And that has 300.
That's where I think there's a ton of value too. For
50
the
videos.
listeners.
Yeah. So anybody gets on there and watch, just leave some comments and subscribe, because we're really trying to help. And I truly believe by watching, and obviously it's mine, so I'm biased, but the YouTube videos we have on there are fucking blowing everybody away. It's just a matter of time before people find the library.
Yeah.
Because every time a new guy gets on there, like, holy shit.
Well, there's a lot of dumb information out there right now. It's people are being mind
bad.
blown, especially like I'm trying my TikTok right now, trying to add some value, and people, there's a ton, dude. It's so bad. There's a lot of opportunity for us right now, Matt.
Yeah, half a brain and experience. And you're already ahead of 99% of the people on the fucking internet.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. All right, Roundtable Podcast. Corey G, Small Arms Danny, at Trey Speed, and the graphic gangster himself, Cole Susak. Appreciate you, Matt.
Yep.
We are out.